mental health of individuals. As we begin, I would like you to introduce you to the Sanabel Club of Qatar University, which aims to be a leader in fundraising for humanitarian causes, uniting the community according to Islamic principles. Sanabel's mission is to lead and guide students and faculty members to become more involved in humanitarian activities that allow QU students to build up fundraising, team management, and interpersonal skills that resonate with Islamic principles and Qatari culture of sharing and giving. Along with this, we also support projects licensed by the Education Above All (EAA) for the annual charity week event to support education for everyone, which in fact is happening this week on and off campus, alhamdulillah, for which we expect your support. In addition, there are other projects planned by Sanabel Club members to support the QU students through student aid fundraising events. Today's panel discussion topic is very familiar to majority of the people present, or more like it's a part of our lives. Lala Dalia, a spiritual writer and the founder of the Vibrate Higher Daily, a vibrational living online community and mentoring program, once said, I quote, "Self-care is how you take your power back. Mental health is the state of well-being of an individual who recognizes his or her own abilities and cope with stress, work efficiently and productively, and is able to make decisions, enjoy life, and make contributions to the community. Many a times, there are factors that can disturb the mental state of mind, but there are various ways that one can cope, face, and overcome the disturbance. I quote, you can't control everything. Sometimes you just need to relax and have faith that things will work out. Let go a little and let life happen." Cody Kemplinger, the best-selling author who has written many novels for various age groups. The moderator for today's discussion is Dr. Abdul Quddus Abdul Basit. Mr. Abdul Quddus has a bachelor's and master's in accounting from Qatar University. He is currently in his last year of PhD candidacy at College of Business and Economics in Qatar University. Advisor of the QU English Debate Club and senior member of QU Alumni Debate Chapter. He is currently working as an independent business and finance consultant. By the grace of Allah, alongside his professional education, he has memorized the Quran and has completed certified courses in fiqh, aqidah, dawah, and Arabic language from accredited Islamic education centers in Qatar. Abdul Quddus is highly skilled and experienced in chairing and running discussion panels. He has previously engaged in events hosted by Doha Debate, Qatar Debate, Doha Youth Forum, and QU on diverse issues and subjects. Now, I take this opportunity to let Mr. Abdul Quddus take over the platform and guide us through this lovely session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shaima, for that lovely introduction and welcoming speech for our panel and audience today. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala Muhammad Rasulullah. Dear audience, regarding our topic today on the topic mental illness and COVID-19 pandemic. A lot of us may have heard this topic earlier. A lot of us may have been open to this understanding of what's happening or what happens to a person when they stay alone or when they're not open to outside and social life. To introduce this topic from a moderated perspective, let's see, when a person is injured, the medical professional can see the damage, use x-rays and other equipment to identify the issue and try to give appropriate medication and treatment. Because most of it is tangible, you can see it, you can observe it. However, an illness that is intangible and that may not be easy to identify is somewhat, or we can call it as mental illness. It could mean multiple things, from reading or writing disorders to anxiety, depression, from stress of work and studies to pressure of society and people, all which can be overwhelming for a person to deal with and overcome. Hence leading to more issues and possible worsening of the situation. Today we have gathered to discuss the issue of mental illness especially focusing on the COVID-19 pandemic and education in general, both from a medical and intersecting Islamic perspective. In recent past, especially, we have heard and read a lot of news on the issues and problems that many people have been facing in regards to mental health, especially in young adults, that is school-going kids or university bachelor students or young adults in their 30s. Hence, we felt it was an important topic for us to discuss and elaborate more on in order to normalize the discourse of the same so that people achieve or reach to better outcomes in terms of reaching medication, reaching professional help, reaching out to professional help and getting proper medication in this sense. For today's panel discussion, firstly, I invite our panelist, that is Ms. Aisha Abdul Hadi. To introduce her, she currently works as a specialist pediatric speech therapist in the UK National Health Service and in English primary schools in the UK. She is the founder of Quran Quest, an international online coaching platform created to bring mothers and children together through parenting values in light of the Quran and Sunnah. As a certified positive discipline parent educator, these lessons are not just taught, but implemented in daily life as a mother of 7. MashaAllah, alhamdulillah. Ustada Aisha has worked closely with sisters of local community and as a member of Central Mosque Committee to promote positive mental health and speaks from experience through her own challenges during lockdown whilst balancing homeschooling and working from home. Ms. Aisha Abdul Hadi has a bachelor's in psychology from University of Birmingham, the UK. She's got a master's in development psychopathology from Durham University and master's in speech and language therapy from Newcastle University. For the opening remarks, we welcome Ustada Aisha Abdul Hadi on the topic mental health and COVID-19.
Jazakallahu khairan, Brother Abdul Khudus. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. Is it possible I can get a screen share just to show my slides, inshallah?
Sure. Hayat, if you can give the permission, please, to share the screen.
Jazakallahu khairan.
So Ustada Aisha, just a brief introduction on the topic, and inshallah we'll move on speaker by speaker, and we'll go rounds in 3 to 4 rounds, inshallah. Thank you. Please go ahead. You're on mute, I suppose, Ustada Aisha?
Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me okay? Brilliant. Okay, sorry about that. I hope you can see the slides as well. Okay, so A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Jazakumullahu khairan for inviting me here today for this really important discussion, mental health and COVID-19. So I'm just going to give a really brief background or opening remarks on the topic. So we're just going to begin by when we think about mental health, what does it actually mean? So mental health is a state of well-being in which an individual realizes his or her own abilities, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively, and is able to make a contribution to his or her community. So that's if we sort of think about the formal definition of mental health. And of course, oftentimes we do think about our physical health and our body through trying to keep that healthy, but we might neglect or not think about mental health as such. With regards to thinking about mental health in COVID, there were quite a few issues that arose specifically during the pandemic that came to light in relation to mental health. So I'm just going to briefly go through some of them first of all. So one of the main ones was staying connected to others. Now, as human beings, we are, of course, social creatures, and, we have so many social connections from family, friends, work colleagues, etc. The list goes on. And one of the reasons why people's mental health was severely impacted during the pandemic is because these connections were cut to such an extreme that not only were we isolating and, we weren't allowed to meet people, but we had to also socially distance when we did meet people. We had to refrain from handshaking and all of those things. So that was something that for human beings is quite an unusual thing to do for such a prolonged period of time. So that's one of the reasons in which mental health was indeed impacted. Also, there were practical things that you do on a daily basis, which you don't even think about, like, for example, going out and doing your regular grocery shopping that you weren't allowed to do. There were things that people became worried about. For example, people became stressed with regards to what was going on in the pandemic and how it affected them and their families as well. One of the other things was looking after your body. So things like exercise that you would normally maybe have had the opportunity to do, you might have been refrained from doing these kind of things. And this in turn would have affected people's mental health. Staying on top of difficult feelings. Now, and as human beings, obviously everyone goes through different periods of feeling happy, sad, and various other emotions. But I think when people were particularly stressed during the lockdown, then it became quite difficult when you're bottling in those feelings and you're not discussing them with anyone, maybe because you're not able to practically, for example, get a doctor's appointment, or just generally you were restricted from doing so. Another thing some people became quite fixated with was the news. Now, of course, the news is important for us to be able to know what's going on in the world. But because of this 24/7 coverage, which due to the advancement in technology was available to us, some people did become quite fixated in absorbing all that news, and that had a negative impact on people's mental health. And of course, relaxation and sleep was affected because, if you're quite stressed and if you're thinking about something all the time, it does start to impact on your eating. It does start to impact on your sleeping. It does start to impact on your body's ability to have rest. Again, as human beings, we need to have rest in order to be healthy. So all of these things combined, maybe, normally human beings would experience some of them sometimes in their life, but collectively they became quite a huge force of impact on people's mental health in particular. Now, when we think of mental health generically in Islam, there is quite some taboos around this topic. So, and they're not related to Islam. It's more related to the culture and the environment that you're being brought up in. In some countries, mental health is discussed a little bit more openly than in other countries. Sometimes it's because of lack of awareness. Sometimes it's because it's thought of as a taboo or a really bad thing if somebody suffers from a mental health issue, and people are quick to labelize them, and it's usually a negative label. And it's got certain connotations with it in society as well. So these are all things that unfortunately can have a negative impact on a person. However, having said that, when you think about it from an Islamic perspective, alhamdulillah, we are really, really lucky as Muslims. I always say we're really lucky because, we've got Islam, we've got the Quran, and if we follow its teachings and guidance, and if we are able to extract that guidance and apply it to our daily lives, then you'll find that there's a lot that, alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded for us to do in order to help and support our own mental health. So the most obvious hadith, which you all would have been familiar with, is there is no disease that Allah has created except that He also has created its treatment. Okay. Now, when we think of mental health, and when you think of this in a little bit deeper way in the Quran, you think of the word nafs, and you might have heard this before and be familiar with it. And it's used in two different ways in the Quran. The first way the word nafs is used is to indicate our own self, okay? And it's difficult when you're translating from Arabic to English because sometimes you don't get the full meaning of the word. So some people will translate it in English as meaning self. Some people would translate in English as the soul, okay? And an example of this is when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, and remember your Rabb inside yourself, okay? The second way the nafs has been used in the Quran, which is quite frequent, is the nafs referring to a specific part of yourself, and that is part of ourself that's desires, appetite. Some people call it ego. Now, for those of you who study psychology, you would be really familiar with, the Freudian concepts of id, ego, and superego, and how they are all at play, and you have to keep them in balance. So I'm just going to really, really quickly go through them in a bit more detail. So there's different types of nafs. Okay, so there's nafs amara, which is the commanding self. This is when
Aisha, there'll be a question relating to this specific topic. If you can wait for that, that would be great. If you don't mind, please.
That's absolutely fine. So there's different types of nafs. So I'll discuss those in detail in the Q&A session. But Inshallah. To conclude my opening remarks, there's lots that you can do when it comes to mental health, and definitely seek help when you need it, and definitely help other people who might need help when it relates to mental health issues as well.
Thank you. Thank you to cut you short over there, but we have a specific question in that regard. So I thought it would be better for us to, focus and wait for that particular question. Thank you for that.
Absolutely, no problem.
Thank you. We thank Ustad Aisha for opening remarks. Now invite the second speaker for today and second panelist, that is Ms. Hamna Uruj. She is a clinical psychologist from Qatar University, Islamabad, and it's trained in CBT, ABA, hypnotherapy, and NLP. MashaAllah, Ustad Hamna, she is a member of Pakistan Psychological Association and Canadian Psychological
Recording in
Association.
progress.
And practicing clinical psychologist for approximately more than 5 years, and has a vast experience in psychotherapy, psychological assessment, and professional development trainings in both clinical and educational setups. She's currently working as a school psychologist at the Next Generation School in Qatar. And Ustad Hamna's research interest focuses on the cognitive patterns and behavioral styles of individuals and how parental associations play a part in an individual's life. Ustad Hamna Uruj, the floor is yours for opening remarks on the topic.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, and thank you so much for giving such a nice introduction in detail. I'm really honored to be a part of this session, just because that not only that we give importance to mental health and everything, but to just think for a little time that why is it important for us to discuss all these things? Why are we discussing, especially in this time when globally we are hit by a pandemic, right? So it is, even if we are not going through any specific negative changes like the pandemic, still there are thought patterns and emotional imbalances that we definitely go through. So yes, discussing on them, sharing professional thoughts over it, and also making deep down awarenesses for different people, for all levels of people, it is quite important and necessary, so that we can actually go and touch the root cause of things that are creating issues in our personal life and our family lives as well.
Thank you, Ustad Hamna, for that short and sweet introduction. I suppose a lot of it was comprehensively put in there correctly. Now we invite the third panelist for today, Mr. Muad Ahmed. Mr. Muad, he's serving as a lecturer of psychology at the University of Wah in Pakistan. Mr. Muad has more than 5 years experience in teaching, clinical practice, and research experience at higher educational level. He completed his master's in clinical psychology from Qatar University in Islamabad, Pakistan. He has been given the state of subject expert, mashallah, in various universities, clinics, and psychological assessment and training centers. Mr. Muad Ahmed is a member of various professional structures, that is, member board of studies, quality enhancement cell, and editorial boards. With a background in clinical psychology and mental health, Mr. Muad Ahmed has provided professional training to many psychologists, counselors, teachers, and educational managers. He has participated in various conferences, seminars, and workshops as an organizer. He has delivered workshops as a resource person, which enhance the knowledge and improve the skills of the participants. Mr. Muad, the floor is yours.
Thank you, dear Abdul Qudus, for a detailed introduction. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. As my fellow participants has described already what is mental health and how the pandemic it is getting affected, and how we can look after our mental health during this tough times. Let me elaborate a little more in a different perspective now. What is health? It used to be considered that if you are not ill, that means you are healthy. But in latest years, it has been changed now. It's not just merely absence of any illness. Similarly, mental health is not just absence of any psychological disease or disorder, particularly. So what is mental health? Mental health is always trying to get or to improve, to utilize the capabilities of an individual in a maximum period or maximum capacity or possibility we can. So in pandemic, however, we were usually the usual routine, most of individuals were unable to utilize their capabilities at their best because they were not having opportunities to express themselves, their emotions, their thoughts, their other skills which they possess, and they were limited to some only limited activities in their home, staying in their home. So it has directly or indirectly, whether reaching to a disorder or maybe not reaching to a disorder, but just reducing our capabilities or practice our best capabilities, it has affected everyone's mental health. And in this session, with upcoming questions and discussion, we'll identify that what are those factors which can contribute in improving our mental health on school level or college level or university level. What are the roles of these institutions in our life, and similarly, what can be done in the pandemic and in different scenarios, which is not usual as previously used to be practiced. We will discuss further in this discussion.
Inshallah, we'll do. Thank you, Mr. Mu'ath, for that kind of introduction of yours. Coming to our first set of panel questions to our respected speakers. Ustad Aisha, we know that mental health in general may have been a problem before pandemic as well, but it may not have been in the general outlook of people's minds that people approach in a different sense. But during pandemic, we have seen and we have heard via news that people have been a lot challenged in this particular terms. So what, according in your experience, that children, young adults, and what is the biggest challenge in terms of mental health during the pandemic or situations of such kind? If you can elaborate on this, please.
Yeah, I think first of all, everything has just been amplified. So, the usual mental health issues that we know about that both of the previous respected speakers mentioned, I think they've just become a lot worse and a lot magnified due to the pandemic. You're faced with new situations that you wouldn't usually have been. So you imagine a person who suffers from any sort of illness, and now they've got all these extra things going on due to the pandemic. So that can make it quite worse. And I'm glad actually you've mentioned about children. That's another really important point. In young children, mental illness might manifest in a different way. And sometimes if you're not familiar with it, you might ignore the signs and symptoms of behavioral issues or anything. But it's really important to look at the underlying sort of factors. And parents and caregivers know their children best. So it's really important to always be aware of these issues. And I know in UK in particular, and I guess around the world, one of the major issues was children weren't in schools. So they were sitting in front of a computer screen having online lessons, which is not ideal for the entire day. And on top of that, they weren't seeing their friends. And I was a speech and language therapist, the particular young age group, so the toddlers, the preschoolers, have now started coming to me with language delays because, subhanAllah, they haven't had the opportunity to interact or to go out, all those normal things that human beings would do. So that's had a particular impact on them, and those impacts we're seeing now in the healthcare.
So Aisha, just to continue this particular matter, since I brought this question up already, because I have a similar question for Ms. Hamna, I'll come to that in some time. But to continue with the same question, for example, how do we know or identify the symptoms of mental illness in children specifically, and also in young adults? Because most of our audience and who will be looking at this particular video and the club members are young adults in their early 20s, late 20s, early 30s. So how do you identify the symptoms of mental illness specifically in children and young adults? And most of them don't know or understand these particular issues. And how, at the same time, school or university system can deal with these matters.
Okay, so let's start from the lower age spectrum. So when you're thinking about really young children, and sometimes it's hard for them to express themselves, you're looking at different behavior patterns that are abnormal from the norm. And the other two speakers are probably much more qualified than me in this particular field. But we would say to look at their sleep patterns, their eating, their drinking, the language that they're using, withdrawal symptoms if they've given up. Usually young children, you'll know they've got different types of personalities, but if all of a sudden you notice quite a big change, as a parent or even as a teacher, you need to investigate if that child wasn't previously like that. There's a difference between a child being quiet and shy and a child, for example, having selective mutism where they don't talk at all and there's issues going on. And usually, teachers and health professionals are trained to identify these. So I would say if there's any parent out there and you've got a concern, it's much better for you to get it checked out and the doctor and the healthcare professional to turn around and say it's fine than for you to ignore it and it manifests into something a lot worse. So in young children, look for patterns which are not their normal pattern, but also which might be abnormal for that child and could be quite extreme or could be quite a concern for you. When we're coming to young adults, by now you should be quite familiar with your own self. Of course, as human beings, there are going to be days, every single person experiences days when they're feeling a bit rubbish, when they wake up and they're not feeling themselves. But in yourself, when it gets to a point where you're just that down that you're not participating in activities that you normally participate in, maybe your food and drink has changed, maybe your sleep patterns are so disrupted that it's not normal to stay awake all night if an issue is bothering you. And you need to be confident enough to seek help. I would say to any young adults out there, or anybody who sees somebody in the family like this, to really urge them to get professional help. There's nothing wrong with going out to a professional and asking them and talking about your feelings. I think the biggest thing you can do is open your mouth and take that first step to be confident to speak. Speak to somebody you trust. If it's a family member, a friend, a healthcare professional, I don't know, it depends which country you're in. There should be services where you can speak anonymously. So if you're not happy to speak to family because you think they don't understand, please don't keep it bottled in and hidden away. It won't go away by itself. It definitely won't. It will only get worse and it will show up in other areas of your life. So if you're feeling that something is bothering you that much, then definitely seek help and don't do nothing about it. And don't dismiss it, thinking that it'll go away, or don't feel you're the only person feeling like this. There are illnesses out there. There's loads of research out there. There's lots of different types of therapies that can help people. So don't feel like you're the only one experiencing this. Guaranteed there'll be somebody else who's experiencing the same as what you are. In terms of your final point, brother, about what schools and universities can do, I feel like they should have a dedicated counsellor where children can go to in privacy to speak about any issues, or even parents can approach them. Just a signpost. It could be online, it could be through a telephone helpline, or it could be in person. But there needs to be a safe place for the young people to go to when they're feeling like this, and they can get support in that safe place without being judged.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Aisha, for this comprehensive answer for yours. Ustad Hamna, just taking the question more forward from what Ms. Aisha mentioned in regards to mental health symptoms different between children and teenagers, adults. Ms. Aisha did mention these differences between children and adults, but there's a difference between someone identifying as a specialist and someone being a normal family friend or just a friend, a family member, or someone in the university, some colleague of yours. So how do we as non-specialists identify these symptoms in children or adults or your work colleagues? The reason for me asking this question particularly is because we have seen a lot of famous people have committed suicide, and a lot of them, they had this particular background and that they were depressed. On the outside of it, it was not seen, people not recognizing these problems, but on the inside of it, they were facing these problems. So how do we as non-specialists identify these particular symptoms or any kind of signs to identify the problem of mental illness in some person?
Okay, so basically to understand the whole equation, we need to go into the depth of the matter first. The thing is that when we talk about mental health, is just not one general term. There are a lot of factors that might contribute to the to the whole scenario. So let's suppose if you're talking about emotions, we are talking about behavior, and we're talking about cognitions, like the thought pattern. So they all are basically interrelated to each other, right? So if we talk about the difference between the way a person or the way the symptoms are seen with respect to children or young adults or even the old age, the expression, I would say that the expression of those symptoms can vary with age, but the actual emotions, for example, that have been given to us or given to all human beings, they might remain the same. For example, a child might have the same emotion of happiness or sadness like an adult person or a person from the old age, but the expression of that particular emotion can be different, right? So similarly, if there is an issue going on, if there is a person who's feeling disturbed for any matter, let's suppose, the expression might be different of the same issue with respect to age and with respect to gender as well. Like you would have, like we do have people around us that we can actually see that, okay, the expression of emotional things when it comes to women and when it comes to men, they are different, right? So a person might be going through the same issue, but they might be expressing or behaving in a different manner. Now, coming back to your question, as you mentioned, that how as normal beings or how as a layman can be able to differentiate that, okay, this is something related to mental health, or this is something that might need assistance of a professional. So as Ms. Aisha mentioned, that to go and to consult somebody is really, really important, right? So this is basically the first step. We think that, okay, it is important for us to go and consult somebody. But what if I tell you that if as an individual, I do not have an insight that, there is a problem that exists. If, for example, I know that, okay, if I'm sneezing for a long period of time, or if I'm coughing for a long period of time, I need to go and see a doctor because, yes, this is a symptom that might be related to something, right? So I will go and seek help for it. But that is something that I can physically see. But if there is some disturbance or there's some imbalance with my emotional self or with my thought pattern, I might not be able to, connect with it. Similarly, as you mentioned that, we have seen that there are a lot of people, especially a lot of celebrities, that might be doing everything normal, but they end up committing a suicide, or they end up in something that is not very taken as very healthy when it comes to the mental health field, right? So this is a very clear example of that sometimes our emotional and our thought patterns, they are in a state of imbalance, but we might just suppress it to the extent that we might just behave well when we are around our family members or even our colleagues. We might be behaving very nicely, and as we might be behaving the way we are supposed to behave in a certain environment, but still we will be struggling. So number one thing that we need to do, or we need to understand to counter this effect, is that awareness is very, very much important for that factor. And I can see, like, over the years, we have seen that when we were children, the type of awareness we had regarding such topics is quite different from the from the awareness that we are experiencing or observing at this time. So awareness does play a very important part when it comes to the problems that we are facing as an individual, and also when it comes to the problems that we see in other people that might be facing. Now, one thing to counter this thing in such symptoms when it comes to other people, it is very important to understand their thought pattern as well. If I am talking to a person who might get defensive, who might not understand, or who might not even have a very good relationship with me, and if I go and tell them that, okay, I think you have a mental illness and you need to go and seek a professional help for that, the whole process will stop right there, because it will create resistance in that individual to seek help for it. Why? Because we do have a history of such negative connotations regarding such words. So we do need to break that pattern, and we can only do that by creating awareness and by letting others and everybody in our family members or in our social circle, when we talk about such matters, when we talk about such things in a positive and healthy manner.
Exactly, as you mentioned, how to assist, and that was my question number 2, but you sort of answered in the first question itself. How do you assist someone if you notice them having mental illness concerns, and how we should approach these particular problems? And one of the basic things should be creating awareness around in the society for people to know, and all these negative connotations that we have. And I'll come to one of the questions, inshallah. Thank you, Ms. Hamna, for that. Mr. Mu'adh, since mashallah you're a lecturer, so I would like to ensure that the question is directed towards based on your experience in there. And since a lot of us, we are university students, how do you think that university or a school, it plays a role to change or influence the state of mind of students, especially during pandemic and even outside pandemic, because we are moving towards, alhamdulillah, normalization, lifting of restrictions. So how do you see this all playing around the university and the education sector as a whole?
Okay, Mr. Qudus, thank you for the relevant question for me. Universities are always part of development in any society. They train the new generations. They help us to understand the new phenomena and to develop strategies accordingly in the whole nation. However, this pandemic situation was totally new for universities as well. So unfortunately, during this pandemic session, or the time period of 2 years almost, universities were also identifying to survive and to identify that how can we educate our students, how can we facilitate our students regarding their formal education as well as to their socialization or their social skills development and other areas of life which need to be trained as part of the university. So there has been a lot of students who have been part of the university and they have completed their degrees like MSc or some other degrees of 2 years during the whole pandemic year time online. Those students did not interact with anybody. They just learned the professional or only the formal part of the education. They could not learn how to register a complaint, how to understand the emotions of others, how to interact with others, how to work in teams, and they were unable to do this part. So unfortunately, it is true that universities could not play a good role or to play a comprehensive role during this pandemic in socialization or mental health of the students. However, this has given a tremendous experience to universities that whether students are coming to us or they are staying at home, their mental health and there's other areas of education, not only formal, but the informal or indirect learning methods should also be part of the priority. And there should be some method through which we can make the students to learn and acquire those skills which are necessary for life. And universities particularly not only do not help in formal education, rather they also help the students to learn the social skills which are necessary for lives. However, when I talk about mental health particularly, then I would like to insist that college is the time or school is the time, means from 8th year of education till 8th standard class till intermediate or 12th year of education before the university time is the crucial time period when individuals shift their personalities or they acquire new skills and they experience dramatic change in their life, which is a teenage actually. All those experiences which has been happened in childhood are not in anyone's control, but that childhood experiences has formed some kind of personality, or it has contributions in our personalities. But those personalities can be changed or switched or modified or at least strengthened in a positive manners with the help of role of teachers and our syllabus, our scheme of studies, all those can contribute in that. So before the university part, I'll talk about university part, what role can university can play. But before the university part, college time is the actually crucial time, in my humble opinion, that it should design some kind of scheme of studies which help our students to empathize well, to tolerate well, to develop a discussion environment, to understand that if we react immediately, what will happen? If we just give up, what will happen? What are the benefits of giving up? Forgiveness, or these are the aspects of life which each and every aspect of life plays a significant role in our life, which will help us to avoid or get eliminated or to keep ourselves safe from many psychological disorders upcoming in our life. As we have seen statistics that most of the suicide or depression is prevalent in adolescents, actually in the teenage individuals. So that is actually the crucial time where a mental health curriculum, in my opinion, that should be part of, other than the formal education, it should be part of the school learning. As similarly as Madam has mentioned earlier, that school counselors are mandatory, which are being mandatory nowadays. I understand that, but however, a school counselor might not be able to reach each and every individual, because if a school counselor has to counsel each and every individual, we need a lot of resources and a lot of school counselors to interact with each and every individual. So if we design a curriculum based on the mean problems of this age, the majority of the issues, the most common issues of this age, we will be able to guide and help the majority of the students, and those who are on extremes, whether positive or negative, that can be guided or taken care of with the counselors. Coming to university parts, university's major role is to help the students to develop the unique thinking patterns, the different thinking, the creative thinking patterns, to identify their roles and identify and go into deep research and identify new methods, new ways, target the problems and identify new solutions for the problems. This should be the role of universities. However, and of course, these patterns are being addressed by the universities, that we should embark new thinking patterns in our students that require discussion, that requires debates, that requires a lot of other methods in which we should know that how to debate, how to tolerate the difference of opinion, how to help the individuals who are in need, how to identify change in the behavior of the colleagues or friends or class fellows. If there are some certain kind of change which are uncertain or new to the client, the friend or colleague, then we can report to some authorities or maybe teacher, maybe counselor or some family member or somebody that this person needs psychological mental health attention. So in concluding this remark, the first major part should be played at the level of college, which can be by the designing of the mental health curriculum, and at the university level we should help the students to develop new unique thinking or creative thinking patterns. And of course, university students are a little bit mature and senior, they also understand the mental health problems and they have a better understanding and awareness regarding psychological problems. So they should be trained with that. The most common problems with, as Ms. Hamna has also explained, that suicide and depression are most common and people do not identify themselves. Yes, I agree that there are some problems. For example, there is a symptom of depression that it should lead to some social occupational problems. But people might claim that I feel depressed most of the time, but my social occupational problems, I don't see any social occupational problems. But it's not true. They are unable to identify that if my mood is not depressed all the time, or my mood gets better and I get rid of depression, my functionality can increase, my social relationships, my social functioning can increase, and my occupational outcome and job outcome can increase with that. So if I summarize with the reference to Ms. Hamna is that those students who are part of university, if they have good awareness, then they can identify the change in behavior. Any change which is unusual in anyone's life should be reported to either teachers, authorities, parents, counselors, or anyone who is close to that person.
Thank you, Mr. Muad. That was one of the questions that we had that that we discussed earlier, that was about the critical changes that we make in, for now and for universities in the future as well. And somewhat you have touched that particular point as well significantly. And I think, we have to understand the role that university plays in the life of young adults and people who are studying in this education sector. So thank you for that response, Mr. Muhad. Before we move on with the next question to Sada Aisha, just to remind our audience, on YouTube Live, in the description box, we have a link for question and answers. If you have any questions for our panels, like for Sada Aisha, Sada Hamna, or Sada Muad, any of the questions, any questions you have relating to our topic today, please, you can click the link on our YouTube live page. In the description box, you will find the link for question and answers. You can just click on the link and you can ask questions to our panelists today. Right. Ustad Aisha, before we move on to the idea of religion and how Islam can play a significant role in this, I have a question that kind of touches all the three speakers in here, and I'll come one by one. If you can just speak 1 minute or 2 minutes max by sharing your experience in this particular question, so that, we are able to fix our time, hopefully by 5 p.m., that is 10-15 minutes from now. Or we can, extend it a bit more, 5 minutes until 5 or 5:10 to ensure our audience questions are included in this particular discussion today as well. So the question to Sada Aisha, if you can respond in a minute or two, is, in your experience, what are the most common barriers that people have in seeking treatment to mental health?
I think some of these issues have already been mentioned, as both Sister Hamna and Professor Miles have mentioned. A key one is awareness. Until you don't have that awareness, then you don't have the information, and if you don't have the information, then you can't act upon it. So I think that's one of the main ones I've seen, certainly with the younger children, where parents would come, and sometimes you might be the first person who's even has a concern, because the parents would never have picked that up as something to be worried about. So I think awareness is a really big one. The second one is sometimes I think people, and I've mentioned this as well, aren't comfortable in certain cultures to come forward and say that that's what they think that the problem is. So they might prefer to either say something completely different, just ignore it altogether, or just pretend that it's not happening, which is quite sad, because then one of the problems we see, especially in the UK, as a manifest of that, is children get to the point where they're doing all sorts of behaviours that they shouldn't be doing at all, and then they start getting in trouble with the law. So it escalates pretty quickly. And that's because at a foundational level, when they were younger, these things weren't picked up on and they weren't acted upon. So I think that's another one. Those are, to be honest, I think those are the main ones. If people got awareness, then they can do something about it. So it's all about educating people and highlighting as much as you can, and removing that taboo as well, and talking about these things more openly. And maybe we need to talk about them in the people's own language as well, not necessarily in English, so that we can relate to them more on a personal level, and they can be more comfortable to have the kind of discussions. Because as a speech and language therapist, I know language barrier is a huge one. Sometimes you think, you might talk medically and you think the parents or the people understand, but you have to be really tailor your talking to whoever it is that you're talking to. And sometimes if the parents haven't got that level of educational awareness, that could be another problem.
Correct. Right. True that. Ms. Hamna, just to go to the next level of this particular question, and let's make it focus on the university students themselves. So in your best suggestion what's your best suggestion to destigmatize mental illness and learning disabilities among students, faculty and staff, and family as a whole, since you have experience in terms of education as well? So how do you approach this particular issue?
Well, in terms of this age group, when we talk about university students, or we can, also add college level to that, because that is as Mr. Maz mentioned, that it is the very right time to counter or to, specify such things and to shape the thought patterns of an individual. So even if when we're talking about students who are at a university level, we as caregivers, as our teachers, as any support system that we provide to such people, we need to understand that it is completely fine and it is all right if somebody is going through a certain thought patterns, or if somebody is not going through. The thing is that when we talk about certain levels, we see that okay, at this age or at this level, it is expected from the society that an individual has to achieve this thing. An individual has to be shaped in such and such manner. An individual has to be doing things in in such manner. The thing is that it is completely fine if somebody is still struggling to get to that point. And as family members and as caregivers, we need to understand that if somebody is reaching out to you, there can be different reasons for it, because a lot of times this is an area where directly a person might not feel comfortable to reach out to you. A person might be saying things or shaping the conversation in a manner which is indirectly related to the issue, or it might be related to some secondary problems a student or an individual might be facing. So yes, number one thing, as we have been discussing, that awareness is very important, psychoeducation is very important, and when it comes to individuals who might not have the insight of that particular issue, the people around who might think that okay, this is something that we need to talk about, the resistance has to be the very first step that should be reduced or removed to achieve the best or maximum results. I would like to just quote an example here that I feel from my field right now, is that when awareness is not present, or when psychoeducation is not there, there is extreme resistance, not only at part of the individual himself or herself, but to their family members as well. Why? Because sometimes when a teacher, for example, they might have noticed something in a particular student, and they might be thinking that okay, who can be the right person to contact when it comes to such problems. So if a problem is being shared, now I would like to quote two perspectives of this. When it comes to the person who is communicating a certain issue, they might be communicating it in a manner which might escalate the problem, instead of reducing the issue or making it helpful for the other person. So it has to be communicated in a very neutral and a positive manner, so that it helps the other person to understand the positive outcomes of it. And similarly, when it comes to the other side of the picture, we have people whom we tell, for example, if there is a student who is going through certain behaviors and the parents are being told about it, the parents might show resistance to a very high intensity that it cannot happen. So as caregivers or as teachers also, for example, when you're talking about university students as well, it is very important to understand that this kind of reaction is also normal. This kind of reaction is okay to come from a person who might not be psychoeducated. So to let it be part of the process, you have to think that okay, at least it is something that has been communicated, and you have to keep on doing it until and unless they come to a point of understanding.
All right, thank you for that insight, Ms. Arooj. I think for Mr. Muad, I had a similar question in this regards, but I think Ustad Aisha and Ustad Arooj did kind of deep dive into this particular topic. So my question to you would be a bit different. Mr. Muad, that will be in terms of if someone would like to approach more, understand this particular topic of mental illness. So what kind of best resource they would like to advise the students, young adults, or even older people to deep dive into this particular topic and realm of mental illness or mental health?
I would recommend to anyone who wants to learn about the mental health and their own mental health, and to improve their mental health and to function more and achieve more in their life. I would recommend them to study any textbook of positive psychology. They should avoid the psychopathology, because psychopathology is not for any person who wants to study. It will, if someone tries to identify what problem he or she is facing and starts reading psychopathology, it will create more complexes in that individual, that I might have this symptom and this symptom. It will create, so psychopathology requires a proper supervision of experts, that if you are reading psychopathology, psychology, how to deal with it and how to interpret it and how to identify the same problem in individuals and how to deal with the thoughts which you are facing during this study of this course. So that's why I would not recommend anyone to go for psychopathology. I would rather recommend to go for positive psychology. Positive psychology will help you to understand how to enhance your capabilities, how to focus more, and how to enhance your mental health. There are a few other readings, typical books that if anybody wants to note is that Feeling Good is a book which always helps to enhance your mental health and your positive thinking and positivity in your life and avoiding the negative aspects or disorders or and negative thoughts, etc., emotions. Feeling Good is a good book to read. And if someone is in a relationship, a husband or wife or spouse, and they should read also after this book, they should read that Feeling Good Together. I mean, that is particularly addressing the problems of the spouse and wife, means a spouse, husband and wife, and similar things. So these kind of readings which help you to enhance your positivity, and if you increase your positivity, it will automatically reduce your negative aspects of your life. So ultimately you will achieve the mental health in a better way. A very precise answer.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Mr. Maat, for that. Before we move on to the question and answers, questions that we have from the audience, I have this one last question that probably it's open to all of the three panelists to answer. We have this question because we believe, as members of Sanabel Club, as alhamdulillah, as believers, as Muslims, we do believe that we do have treatments that is physical, tangible, and that is something emotional and spiritual as well. And we believe that Islam has a solution to almost all problems of humankind. So we believe even for mental health, the hadith that says, Prophet ﷺ that talks to Sahabi and says, you tie your camel, then trust in Allah. So you do your treatment and also trust in Allah and do dua for health. From that particular perspective, is Sada Aisha, Sada Hamna, and Mr. Mu'ad can share your ideas, in a minute, if you can share your understanding of, or a minute or two, I would say, how Islam can assist tackling mental health issues. I would request Ms. Aisha first.
Yeah, I think you've said the main one there, brother. So having that relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is first and foremost. And as Muslims, we do what non-Muslims would call as meditation. We have been commanded to do the 5 daily prayers. That's a very obvious one. That's farz on all of us. And that is a time when you're talking to your creator. So that's your time with your creator. That is a massive time for communication, of asking things in private, and really use that time, whether you're at work or school or whatever's going on in the house with the children, use that as a quiet 5-10 minutes of reflection to get that out of your system. As a human being, you need to have that quiet, reflective time anyway. Also, as Muslims, we have the power of dua. Of course, that's the most powerful tools that we have got. Call upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah's asking you, Allah's commanding you to call upon Him. So call upon Him and ask Him for forgiveness. The biggest issue that I see after, I've taught in the mosque for 10 years, is the people who have the issues are withdrawn from Islam. They're withdrawn themselves and distance themselves, I should say, not withdrawn, distance themselves from Islam, from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then these issues start creeping up in their lives. And if you go back to the root causes of it, you see they're not following what's been commanded, and they haven't got that really strong relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're not practicing to the best of their ability. In turn, this impacts on your children and on your family life and what you do and don't do. So that would be my sort of main piece of advice. Stick to the teachings of the Quran, stick to the teachings of the Sunnah. Do as much dua as you can. First and foremost, ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for help, and of course go out and seek medical counsel when and where you need it as well.
Inshallah. Thank you, Ms. Aisha, for that. Ms. Uruj? Sorry, Ms. Hamna.
Yes, please. To answer this question, I would like to, point out towards a very easy concept to understand, but a very difficult one to actually go through it or implement it, which is the lifestyle. As our religion, it does talk about creating a balance, whether it is related to religion, whether it comes to the worldly affairs, the balance should always be there. So when we talk about lifestyle, whether it is It is related to the physical aspects of our health, mental aspects of our health, it's a religion or occupation, anything that it counters. There has to be a balance. There has to be a lifestyle that needs to be there. We cannot expect that, okay, after doing such and such strategy for like 1 week or 2 weeks, I'll be a mentally healthy person or I'll be a physically healthy person. To be physically healthy, I need to keep myself moving. I need to do exercise. I need to have good food. I need to be nutritious. Similarly, to be on the right path, to be spiritually in a well-being situation, I need to understand that I have to continue that process. I have to work on my belief systems. I need to have that balance in my life. Similarly, when it comes to mental health, we need to see that it is the lifestyle that we should be focused on. It is something that we need to be positively attached to, rather than just eliminating or reducing the negative symptoms of a thing. We should not reach to that level, and we should create a balance in such a way that it helps throughout the systems of our human mankind.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that, Ms. Hamna. Mr. Mu'ad, your thoughts on this?
Yes, I would like to begin with the theory that there is a theory which says that behavior is driven by our emotions. Our emotions are driven by our thoughts, and our thoughts are driven by our beliefs. So if we are a believer, if we believe in things, it will affect our thinking pattern. Our thinking will lead to a good emotion, and our behavior will be modified. So for let's take an example that if I believe that I am worthless, then most of my thoughts will be, I am incapable of, I will not be able to do, I will not be able to cope with this, I will not be able to overcome with this, and it will make me more depressing. If I believe that that world is a bad place, then every experience which I had in my life, I will relate it to that, and my thinking will be same, and my emotions will be same, and the behavior will be same. So if we are believers, if the first thought which came to my mind that I am not a good person, then we, as a believer, we will be referring to the religion that every individual is good and beautiful. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taken 3 custom oaths to address that. وَالتِّينِ وَالزَّيْتُونِ وَطُورِ سِينِينَ وَهَذَا الْبَلَدِ الْأَمِينِ لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ. So that explains that I am good. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has make sure that I should realize that I am good. The insan is good. The human being is good. Similarly, if any other thoughts, which is negativity, hopelessness is most of the time is the cause of the majority of the problems, and the depression is the most common prevailing problem in our youth, and that is significantly or highly related with the hopelessness. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that hopelessness is kufr. It's not allowed in the religion, that you should always have faith, always have hope from the Allah that everything which has happened, it has happened for good, and it will turn into good. Maybe you don't know what is good in this for you, but it will turn good for you. And those who are anxious, who have future, that what will happen tomorrow, will I be able to eat tomorrow? So these kind of thoughts will also be addressed by the religion, that you should worry about today, and that you should worry about today. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're audible.
Oh, good.
There was a bit a network issue, but you're audible now.
Yes, thank you. That you should focus on today, and you should you should obey the instructions of Allah, and leave the worry and the future and the risk and the other things to Allah. So these are just few examples which help us to understand that we obey the instructions of Allah, the guidance of the religion, that we will be able to save ourselves from a lot of major psychological issues we experience on day-to-day life.
Thank you, Mr. Mu'ad, for this insight. Now, before we move on to our questions from the audience, we have a bunch of questions, a few questions in there. I will select 3 most appropriate questions, and we have questions I'll pick up questions for each of the 3 speakers, inshallah, so that we finish within the next 10-15 minutes maximum, and we will have the closing word of thanks by Ms. Anoud. Before we do that, to our audience, we have in our description link. In the description of our YouTube video that's going on live right now, we have a link for donations for Charity Week. So it's for education all around the world. and for charity for people around who are in need and to help them out. So in the description of our YouTube live page, you can go into the box and you can click on the Charity Week link to people in need, inshallah, and may Allah accept it from us and you. Ustad Aisha, the question for you, it's from Newcastle. It says, it's from one of our audiences. It says, how to deal with teenagers when the professionals are not able to talk with the parents and the patients do not admit themselves that they have an issue? How to deal with cases of this sort?
I'd say the most important thing is to have a strong relationship with your children, and this is something that I teach in my parenting course. Until you have that connection with your children, you can't. It's true, you can't get through to them. Even more so when they get to a teenage age. A lot of the time, we preach to children, especially when they get to that age, or we shout at them, we yell at them, or we talk at them. We don't talk to them or with them. And the difference is you need to start from the basics. You need to sit down. It's way too much for me to cover in just 1 minute, but fundamentally you need to have that relationship with them and that connection with them. You need to both be open to talking and you both be open to listening. So it can't be a one-way system. And as parents who have teenagers will full well tell you, if you tell them just to do something, it'll go in from one ear and out the other ear, and they'll definitely not listen. So sit down and have an open and honest discussion. When we, as adults, whatever we model, that's what children are watching. If we can model when we're feeling down ourselves, if we can talk about our own problems, then we're giving the children invitation to talk about their problems and that it's okay and that everybody has their issues and problems to deal with. So if you can sit them down with yourself or somebody in your community or your family that are trustworthy between you and the child needs to feel safe and secure to be able to open up about the problems. And of course, yes, the other things are secondary, dealing with what the problems are, and that can all happen. But as a first step, you need to be able to have the opening discussion with the child in terms of what's bothering them. So try and have that open, work on your relationship with the child. And if you need to take them somewhere where the both of you can talk in an open and honest way with maybe a mediator between you. I often see teenagers won't tell their parents everything because they've not done that from a young age.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Aisha, for that answer. I hope, inshallah, our participants who asked this particular question got the response. Mr. Mu'ad, the question to you, I would just paraphrase this question because it's a bit strong in here. That is, a lot of people, we understand this because since you're a lecturer, that's why this question is posed to you. Young adults, late teenage students, or in the early 20s, be it males or females, they have this concept of we will be seen as weak people if we put out this mental illness issue to someone else because they cannot see or feel our problem. Or especially to men that you're a boy or you're a man, you're not supposed to cry or you're not supposed to say these problems out loud. So how do you, as a person in psychology or a male, see this particular issue and how do we overcome this particular problem?
This is very unfortunate that it is still a taboo in most of the societies that if a person is taking professional help for their mental issues, that person is considered or labeled with a lot of other names. This is unfortunately, it's true, but it's a taboo and it's true. And we have to overcome with this with a lot of psychological awareness practices with the adults, with the youngsters, with the teenagers, that it's okay to have an issue. I usually quote an example that if somebody gets diabetes, whether it's his fault or her fault, no, it's a disease which is happened to the person. If somebody is getting sick physically by anything or God forbid by accident, is it his fault? No, it's not his fault. It happens. It comes from Allah. Similarly, the psychological issues which we experience are true with everybody. I usually ask a very simple question from everybody that can you name it? Everybody has issues. Those can be of different intensity. Those can be of different frequency. I might have 5 to 10 issues. Somebody might have 20 to 30 issues. I might have very less intense issues. Some might have issues in their life. Nobody is free of issues in their lives. So if everybody is having issues, I'm assuming my internet is creating problem again.
No, we can hear you. I switched off
Here's
my camera so that it moves on much
Perfect.
smoother.
Okay, fine. If everybody has issues in their life, someone has more or someone has less, someone has more severe and someone has less severe. The concluding is that if everybody has issues and if they are unable to help themselves, and should they keep that problem for their lifelong, or rather they should seek professional help and overcome with that and learn how to overcome with the similar problems in their upcoming life. So the wise decision is to go and seek help. It's not to portray you weak. It's to identify and accept that yes, I also have psychological issues, and let's make an effort to overcome this and not encounter the same problem later on in the age. So I encourage my students to seek professional help when it is needed, to at least try professional help. And let's talk about the crying issue. The crying is no doubt is a major topic of the talks in to crying of males especially. So there is always a suitable place to do certain things. Everything is, you should go to mosque to pray, and you cannot do many other things in the mosque. So mosque is designed or catered for some specific kind of behavior. Similarly, the psychotherapy session is designed to express your emotions, no matter what emotions those are. You can express those emotions verbally by your behavior or by many other means. Those are not judged. They are sitting next to you. It will help you to identify the most suitable solution. You can try in the session, and you can out or express your emotions in front of the professional, and the professional will
I think now there's some serious issue with the connection from Mr. Mu'ad. If you can still hear us, 5 seconds. Else we'll move on to the next question and we'll finalize our discussion for today. Yes, I think, there's some audio issue from Mr. Mu'ad. So, Mr. Aruj, Ms. Hamna, last but not least, the question to you. So, okay, Mr. Mu'ad is back. So, do you have any closing comments in there, Mr. Mu'ad?
Just its closing comment. So, I'm sorry for the internet problem.
No problem.
On my side. Yes. So, whatever happens, that if somebody has identified a problem and rather staying with that problem throughout their life and affecting your life and the people around you, it's always wise to seek professional mental health, professional help from the professionals. So that's my recommendation, and to avoid the taboo, to overcome this taboo, is that to always spread awareness. So with these two remarks, I would conclude my comment.
Thank you, Mr. Mu'ad, for that. Okay. Ms. Hamna, the question to you to close up our discussion on this particular topic for today is, since a lot of people, we all talk, alhamdulillah, mashallah, about mental health. You approach professionals, and mashallah, we live in countries where we have access to these mental health situations or institutions and professionals. But a lot of people, we have to understand that there's a taboo in society. A lot of parents themselves may not encourage their kids to go outside and seek professional help, but they would like to help their kids or the children. So what do you suggest to these particular parents, siblings, relatives, family members, friends of those people who have mental illness but don't want to open up in society? Because yes, we have agreed that there's a taboo in society, there's a problem in there. So what advice would you give to these particular people, what they can do by themselves, initially at least, to handle this particular situation before reaching out to someone for professional help, or if they cannot reach out to professional help?
Okay, so basically, when it comes to the mindset that we're talking about, that yes, we do have such taboos surrounded towards mental health, and I think that it is not just in certain parts of the globe or certain regions. It is something that is all over, but some areas might have a higher, intensity of such taboos, and some might have less. But the thing is that as an individual, if anybody else they think that, okay, there is a problem that I can see, I need to understand that is it my thought pattern that is creating resistance for me to seek help? Because there might be somebody who needs your support. He or she might need a caregiver's support, but the caregiver is indulged into their own negative thought patterns and the pressure of the society. So if I myself cannot handle my thought pattern and I myself can be affected by something that should not exist, and I think that okay, it is something that shouldn't be there, so if I am supporting it, if I'm supporting that negative thought pattern, there's no difference that I'm creating in the in the society. So if I want to bring out change, and even if I want to help that only one specific individual, I need to step forward and I need to understand that it is my time to break that negative thinking. And also that when it comes to us realizing that okay, this is the first step, or this is the icebreaker that we need to create, right? So we also need to think into the factor that when it is related to such negative connotations or negative thought patterns coming from the society, I am also, or any individual, they are also part of that society. So it is our chance to be in the same negative environment or community, or mark a change in that. So until and unless we step forward to break a negative thinking pattern, we might not be the change, or we might not help any other person. Similarly, if somebody is going through a physical illness, am I going to be hiding that? Am I going to be suppressing that in a manner that okay, no matter what happens, we don't need to move out of this family environment, or the thing should remain inside? Why? Just because what other people might think. So I need to think to myself that why am I concerned about other people's thought patterns, which I cannot change? I cannot control the thought patterns or the behaviors of other people. I can only control the thoughts and behaviors that I am involved to, right? So caregivers and supporters need to step up when the other person, or when they see that there is somebody who needs help from us, and they need to be supportive and confident enough to provide that assistance to that particular person, because only they can be the ladder of the whole positive situation.
Thank you, Ms. Hamna, for those remarks and answering the question from our participant from Qatar. Dear audience, dear panelists, we have come to our discussion today. I would like to thank all of you. And for my moderator closing speech, it is about we have to learn, respect, and help each other, because the stigma and the stereotypes, especially in our societies, all around the world as well, towards mental illness is something serious, and it should be better understood. And we need to overcome these barriers to ensure the person or people affected by this kind of mental illness, whatever it is, they get proper treatment and help at the earliest possible. A lot of people, they have this understanding because it's in, they have this understanding because we are religious, people may not face mental illness. It could go both ways, and religion does not stop you from seeking professional help. Never ever we have heard anyone saying that we need to not seek professional help, especially from the scholars who are learned people. As we mentioned earlier as well, you do your bit, you tie your camel, and then just trust in Allah that Allah helps you out as well. So you have to take the first step by yourself. If you're facing any mental illness issue, if you have an issue by yourself, you are the first person who knows about it. Do not stigmatize or be afraid of people around. You go and take the first step. Approach some professional, approach your family, approach your friends, go out there and seek help. And inshallah, we hope that you get better as soon as possible. So as it's mentioned in the Quran as well, as Allah and His Messenger Prophet Muhammad mentioned, we hear this every day, we recite this every day. Alam nashrah laka sadrak wa wada'na anka wizrak. Then did we not expand for you, O Prophet Muhammad your chest for easiness? Inna ma'al usri yusra. After hardship there's this ease. Indeed, there is ease after that. And it's mentioned through Tawbah, the story of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu, La tahzan inna Allah ma'ana. That do not grieve, O Abu Bakr, Allah is with us. So do not be afraid, Allah is with you. We have people who have resources, you have professional help, be it in Qatar University, be it outside, be it anywhere around the world, there's help. Seek out in there, right? So there are du'as in there, there's in hadith, there are du'as, there are in Quran, there are du'as, there's medication out there, there are people with professional help and research, medication, doctors, psychologists, with all these kind of different assistants from school until university and even beyond that as well. So the dua in Sahih Bukhari that says, Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-hammi wal-hazn. So the du'as are there. And Ibn Abbas radiallahu anh mentions the hadith from Abu Dawood. It's mentioned istighfar, asking forgiveness and seeking forgiveness from Allah regularly helps to ease your problems and to expand your rizq, to expand your bounty from Allah as well. So do not shy away from reaching out to professionals and the right people, and they're there to help you out as well. So it's you who should be taking the first step, especially in Qatar, because we are from Qatar University, Sanabel Club, and there's a service that's launched in Qatar by the medical professionals. You dial 16000, that is 16,000. You dial it on this particular number. You select your language, Arabic or English, and there are different languages available in Qatar, and you select option 4. So that is for your mental well-being and mental health. The services out there from Qatari government, from Hamad Medical Corporation, you dial 16,000, 16000 in Qatar, and you select your language and select option number 4 for mental assistance. And in different countries around the world, you have in the UK, in Pakistan, Qatar, India, in the GCC, you have these services. Google them. The services will be out there for you to reach out for your particular assistance, inshallah. And approach them and make sure you use them to the best of possible to overcome this implicit issue. So from my side, I thank the Sanabel Club at Qatar University for giving me this wonderful opportunity to lead and moderate this amazing and learned panel. And I will leave the floor to Ms. Al-Anoud for the word of thanks. Thank you very much from your side. Jazakumullah khair. Ms. Al-Anoud?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I am Al-Anoud Al-Nasiri, a student of College of Health of Health Sciences at Qatar University and a member of Sanabel Club to give the vote of thanks. Here we come to the end of our event, the mental health discussion, and we would like to thank everyone who had been part of this event. First of the foremost, we want to thank our panelists, Ms. Aisha, Ms. Hamna, and Mr. Maaz, and our moderator, Mr. Abdul Qudus, for their time and their efforts in their sharing and their sharing experience and knowledge with us to make ourselves better as humans and as Muslims. We would like to thank the organizing committee members of the event, Ms. Bushra and Ms. Shaima, Mr. Hayat Ali, Sanabel Club board members and Qatar University, Student Activities Department for approving this event and topic. Our sincere thanks for the Charity Week for their support. Last but not least, our sincere gratitude to our wonderful audience and participants for your questions and presence today, and to the ones who will watch this recording later. To wrap it up, as my colleagues had discussed, what is the mental health and how it's important to be aware of our mental health. Because it's the state of the person that is connected to the emotional, physiological, and the social well-being of the person. Therefore, it will affect how the person feels, thinks, and acts, which all are parts of our daily routine. We hope we all have learned from this event and shall apply for the good of humanity. Well, thank you again and have a great evening. Thank you for attention and assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam wa barakatuh. Just a small note, I got a request. So if anyone would like to contact any of our panelists, Ustaz Aisha, Ustaz Hamna, or Ustaz Mu'ad, you can message us on sanabel@qu.edu.qa, and we can forward you by their permission, inshallah, their contacts. You can contact them for more information. And Ustaz Aisha did share her information in the beginning of the program. So you can reach out to us, inshallah, and we'll try to manage that particular communication. Thank you very much. Have a good evening, and Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you.